The Daily Unlife. Day 3. What's the point of living if you can't feel alive? Ending dead? Lemon Frisk took a quick look at Misty's pip-buck clock, careful not to wake her up. 4:30. He sighed inwardly. He didn't sleep. He doubted Misty had really noticed it the first night, and he really hadn't bothered mentioning it. But ghouls didn't need sleep. The reason a lot of ponies were freaked out about having ghouls in their town wasn't even because of some threat of them turning feral. In fact, that rarely ever happened, from what Lemon Frisk remembered. In Stable 1, there were inhabitants with several degrees of being rusted in their habits, and some of them were indeed better off left undisturbed. But he couldn't remember anyone actually degrading. Mentally, anyway. No, the real reason was that they wandered around at night. Feral or not, ghouls did that. Because they didn't sleep. Lemon Frisk had stayed inside the inn, keeping still for the past 6 hours. But he was getting restless. Very quietly, he snuck outside and breathed in the cool night air. Breathing was one of the other things he didn't need to bother with, but he just liked doing it. It felt good, and made it possible to perform singing, groaning, laughing, and other vital, somewhat verbal communication. Oh, and talking. Looking around the deserted town square, he saw a ghoul standing in the middle of it, leaning against one of the 3 poles that made up the town's central identifying structure. He saw that there was some sort of bunker underneath it, something he hadn't noticed in the crowd of the day. "Morning," he said, walking towards the other ghoul. "Not quite yet," the other one wheezed, in a slow, hoarse voice. "But yeah, I guess. My name's Spring Singer. What's yours?" "Lemon Frisk, and here I thought this town didn't have any pretty mares." The other ghoul, who looked considerably more decayed than Lemon himself, let out a slow, wheezing laugh. "You been talking to Slugger?" "Someone called him that, yeah. He was guarding the gate when we came in." Well, it's a bit of an insider's joke," Spring Singer said. Her lips were almost completely gone, but she had a way of showing her smile with her eyebrows. Lemon Frisk wasn't sure whether to be jealous or not. "See," the mayor continued, "I'm pretty much this town's mascot. I take it you never left this place, then?" "More or less. The real visionary behind this was my husband, Celestia guide his soul." She pointed up to a huge structure she was leaning against. "This here, when it was still fully filled with hay, could keep a family alive for half a century in these wastes." Lemon Frisk took a better look at the 3 poles. "Are those wood? How did that survive 200 years in the open?" "My husband didn't take any half measures ever. The wood's been treated to the point where it can probably last another 2 centuries. She sighed, once again confirming the ghoul's true role for breathing. "His name was Brownleaf. Everyone called him Farmer Brown. He was a smart stallion. That's why I married him. Some good old farmer's brains in there. So when the war started, and people told us about the threat of the mega spells, he didn't wait for Sabletech to save us. He did a bunch of calculations about the distance from the cities and the prevailing winds, and found himself a safest spot in case everything was blown to the moon." She gave a knock on the wooden pole. "And sure enough, this was the safest place. It was just bad luck that we were out selling our produce in one of the cities when the world died." She looked at Lemon Frisk again, and cocked her head. "I heard that in Canterlot. The pink cloud thing was pretty quick. Lucky bastards." "Coughing your lungs out for hours isn't exactly what I'd call quick," Lemon Frisk said, shuddering at the memory of his death. The old mare let out a wheezing laugh. It doesn't compare to a few months of slow rat poisoning. Lemon Frisk's eyes widened. Being a Canterlot ghoul, he never really thought about how other ghouls died. He just assumed it had been about the same. I'm sorry. I never realized. Yeah, she said slowly. I suppose you wouldn't. That's all right, though. It's 200 years ago. She looked around the town square. So yes, this is my husband's life work. The hay den. A bunker with a water talisman under a huge unpoisoned food reserve in a relatively clean area of the wastelands. Such a pity he didn't survive the way back here. He would have loved to see this. It made the wastelands a little bit better. They still shot at you when they first found this place, didn't they? Lemon Frisk said dryly. Spring Singer once again produced a wheezing laugh. Sure they did. But there's this odd saying that the closest friends in the wasteland are people who meet by shooting each other. Misty threw a bottle at my head. Lemon Frisk mused. I wonder if that counts. Misty Cloud woke up from the warm sunlight falling on her coat. She got up and walked towards the window, determined to take in as much of the spectacle as she could before the sun would rise above the Pegasus cloud cover. The sun was special to her, more so than to the ponies out here. Before she left the stable, she had never seen the sun, and she was fascinated by it. Of course she read the books, knew about the general dynamics of the sun and the moon, but to actually see it was quite a different thing. It seemed so huge, yet so small. A tiny speck in the sky with the force to warm an entire world. She kept looking at the sun until it became too bright and began to fade behind the clouds. Finally looking away, she gazed over the empty town square and noticed Lemon Frisk talking to a corpse. She looked a bit longer and saw the corpse move and heard it talk back in a slow, wheezing voice. She frowned. That was what other ghouls looked like? Looked like she owed Lemon Frisk an apology. Hey, Spray Paint, you awake? She asked. The turquoise pony raised his head and yawned. I am now. He looked at her, staring out the window. You were looking at the sunrise again, weren't you? Misty just nodded. Hey, are you alright? Spray Paint asked. I mean, really alright? I know how close you and Big Don't! She cut him off, without looking away from the window. Please. Spray Paint shook his head. Misty, I know you. You just bottle it all up. Please don't do that. You know it won't end well. You, of all ponies, should know better than that. Physician, heal thyself? She said, sounding bitter. I'm all too aware of the psychological impact this has on me. Doesn't mean I can fix it. She looked at the undead stallion down on the town square, which was slowly getting more populated. But I think he can. He makes me feel safe. The ghoul? Spray Paint said, incredulously. You're replacing Big Apple with a ghoul? I'm not replacing anyone! She yelled. Apple's dead, damn it, and nothing can change that. I thought I lost you too, and Lemon Frisk offered to help, asking nothing in return. Are you judging me for trying to survive out here? I'm sorry, Spray Paint said. I'm out of line here. It's just, you've always been jealous of Big Apple, and now you see my attention going to some pony else again. Spray Paint's head drooped. I'm really that transparent? Misty smiled sadly and slowly shook her head. It is my special talent, you know. Misty sighed. I have to admit, you were right. You were right about the bottle caps, and you were right about not looking bad for a ghoul. I told you. Lemon Frisk grinned. And you were right about Spring Singer, Misty said. She really is a nice lady. It was around noon, and with their shopping trip complete, all 3 stable ponies were now wearing some fairly good barding, had full weapon holsters attached to their saddlebags. So, any plans on where to go then? Spray Paint asked. Yeah, the ghoul replied. We're going to New Appaloosa. The turquoise pony nodded. Fine by me. What's there? The Wasteland Survival Guide, Lemon Frisk said, smiling. You guys will need it if you want to live out here. Spray Paint frowned. Exactly how far away is this New Appaloosa? I don't know. A few weeks' travel, I guess. Lemon Frisk said. Spray Paint blinked. Well, in that case, to survive those few weeks, we might want to pick up this neat thing they sell over at the general store. It's called the Wasteland Survival Guide. Might be helpful? They sell it here? Misty asked. Of course they do, Spray Paint said dryly. I imagine they sell it everywhere. After all, what good is a survival guide if you can't survive for weeks on your own before you can get to it? I imagine you could probably write your own by the time you get to New Appaloosa. Lemon Frisk stared at a turquoise colt, dumbfounded. I never honestly thought of that. Misty face-toothed. Alright, so back to the store then. At the store, the preparations for the Sparkle Cola expedition were going rather smoothly. The shopkeeper had hired some trustworthy ponies, got a big cart out of the back of his house, and was getting it loaded with crates to load the bottles in. He looked at the familiar trio that was approaching him, and noticed their new equipment. Howdy, ponies. Y'all seem to squander your riches? Got to keep the economy running, Lemon Frisk said with a smile. Talking about that, you apparently sell copies of the Wasteland Guide? The guide? Course I do. Wouldn't be much of a merchant if I didn't. No one out there should be without a guide. Great. I'd like a couple for the fresh stable ponies. Lemon Frisk smiled. On second thought, make it 3. I lost my own copy. The big unicorn nodded and walked into his shop. By all means, come inside. By the way, he said as he walked to the back of the shop, yesterday was a heck of a day. But in the end, we didn't trade names. Mine's Capsworth. Might I have the pleasure of getting yours? Lemon Frisk, the ghoul answered with a smile. And the pretty mare's Misty Cloud. The shopkeeper glanced at Misty. Looks more like a rusty cloud to me. Misty just rolled her eyes. Capsworth walked back to the counter, 3 copies of the guide floating with him. That'll be 18 caps. Though, I wouldn't mind giving them for free if you accompanied us on this trip. What is your business in New Appaloosa anyway? Lemon Frisk groaned, his head slumping down. It's become irrelevant. Behind him, he heard Misty snicker. Capsworth frowned, looking from the mare, to the ghoul, to the guides now laying on the counter. Misty burst out laughing as she saw the realization dawn on the merchant's face. It's not funny, okay? Lemon Frisk groaned. I just didn't realize they'd be sold here. Huh! The big unicorn laughed. Tell you what, he said. I'll give you folks these for free if you travel with me. That way, I'm sure this ain't all some silly joke, and you can get more of the whole if you want. If the routine's as safe as you claim, this should be a breeze, and you cannot ghouls aren't supposed to be tough as nails, right? Lemon Frisk looked at the 2 ponies walking with him. Misty Cloud nodded. Fine by me. I'm basically just following you anyway. Spray Paint shrugged. Us stable ponies have to stick together, I guess. He didn't sound very convinced. Here we are then. Scorch mark, Capsworth said. Let's hope it's as safe as you claim. Lemon Frisk looked around, clear and not feeling comfortable being back in the burnt village. It is, but... Capsworth's eyes narrowed. Have you been hiding anything? No, but I don't want to just go through here again, Lemon Frisk said. He knew Capsworth wasn't going to like what he wanted to ask, but he felt like he owed the dead village. Consider this, he finally said. As long as there are scorched statues standing in these houses, no one will ever dare come here. The rumors about ghouls will persist. This won't be marked as a safe land. However, he looked the unicorn in the eyes. If we comb it out, go through all the standard houses in the village rim, take down all the bodies, put a bullet between their eyes, you will be sure there are no feral ghouls left, and I'll be sure there are no tortured souls that will stand here until the end of time. That's madness! If even one of them can still move, we would all die. Don't worry about that. I'll investigate myself. There are only 24 houses left here. We can do them in about an hour. I just need your guys to pull the trigger on them. The unicorn looked at him suspiciously. Why is that? Lemon Frisk looked sad. That's personal. Just as Capsworth was about to object, Misty stepped forward, looking extremely serious. Very personal, she said. Please don't press him on that, unless you want to risk deteriorating the sanity of a Canterlot ghoul. We've been all through the same crappy things in life, but they don't beat personally witnessing the end of the world. The unicorn shook his head. Crazy old ghoul. What if I refuse? Lemon Frisk looked up. And you'll be traveling on without us, until we finish it and catch up. He glanced at Misty, who nodded with firm conviction. Last time we came here, we were lost and without supplies, he continued. But now we're fully stocked. We can take our time. Well, from my point of view, this just smells like a trap. You could have boys holed up in these buildings to kill us. For what purpose? Lemon Frisk asked. Take an empty cart and whatever ammunition would be left after the firefight. That seems like a lot of risk for a pretty meager reward. The only stuff worth taking here is the caps we're carrying. Capsworth finally gave in. Alright, you may be crazy, but you have a point about declaring this place safe. It cut quite a piece off our trade routes. He looked at the 4 ponies he hired for hauling the job. Guys, follow the ghoul. Today we're hunting statues. It was a dirty job, but someone had to do it. And with images of his own son haunting his mind, it wasn't going to be Lemon Frisk. Most of the molten ponies were simply dead, the bullet through the head resulting in nothing but a cloud of black dust. Some ghouls could produce no more than a barely audible whine, while others were indistinguishable from their dead comrades save for the goo splattering out when they went with the rest. All of them, without a single exception, were immobile, even those not molten to the floor. Lemon Frisk averted his eyes every time they shot one, but as with the first one, he didn't mind help carrying them outside. After a little more than an hour, the job was done, and the bodies were piled up on the side of the village. The job had put Capsworth in an oddly solemn mood, though, and he decided to spend half an hour longer to dig them a grave. When Misty asked him about it, he said he merely wanted to remove the grisly sight to prevent more rumors about ghouls, since the mummified bodies wouldn't decompose for years. But Misty could see the big stallion was rather shaken by the whole ordeal. When they finally left the village, their moods started to brighten a little. So far, the trip had been blissfully uneventful, and in their own way, they had made the wasteland a little bit better. If nothing else, They at least knew Spring Singer would be proud. As they walked on, Spray Prate somehow got talking with Capsworth. Since the other 4 ponies tended to stay away from the ghoul, this left Lemon Frisk and Misty Cloud relatively alone. Not feeling like getting poked again, Lemon Frisk decided to ask about her stable. 69? Lemon Frisk asked. Are you serious? Misty Cloud sighed. Yes, 69. See here, the button on the front of the suit? It says 69. Lemon Frisk laughed. Oh, wow. I suppose now you're going to tell me about some old joke about that stable is true? Misty Cloud groaned. I have a fairly good idea about what you're going to say, but please indulge me. What do the Wastelands say about Stable 69, besides the obvious sex position joke? Well, see, Lemon Frisk said, grinning. When some of the stables started opening, it turned out that each of them had some sort of social experiment in it. A way of diversified living and thinking styles to, I don't know, see what went wrong and caused the war, or some manure like that. But from what I heard, most of them ended in utter disasters. Anyway, I got no idea if someone actually got a legitimate list of these experiments, or if it's just a silly joke. He looked at the button and sniggered. But they say that in Stable 69, they locked up one stallion with 1,000 mares. Misty didn't reply. She just sighed and looked away from him, causing Lemon to burst out laughing. He quickly recomposed himself and shook his head. And now you're gonna actually confirm that, aren't you? See what I meant about not having to make up crazy stories? Well, it was actually 10 stallions, she said. We call them the Forefathers. She shook her head in disbelief. If that was a social experiment, it was a really silly one. After the first generation, the ratios were evened out again anyway. When the initial craziness passed, they started working on a breeding program to make sure we'd actually survive without eventually having half the population reduced to village idiots. Breeding plans, huh? Lemon cocked poor Lefty again. How'd that work out? Pretty well. We still had some, accident, mind you, but overall, the gene pool's been kept pretty clean. She smiled. No 2-headed ponies. Worked better than out here, then, Lemon Frisk said. You should see what cows look like these days. Cows? Yeah, Brahmin, they call them nowadays. Goddesses know why. So that breeding program's still going, then? The stable opened about a week ago. See, it was supposed to have sensors on the outside to measure the radiation and toxin levels, but they didn't survive. About 50 years ago, the stable council decided to launch a big research effort to see if any signals could be received from the outside. They succeeded about a year ago. A year? Then opening only a week ago? Lemon said. Prudent folks, then. Misty nodded. The Wasteland Research Department filtered out every scrap they got, put a think tank behind it, and eventually informed the stable about the political situation out there. Listening to Red Eye's propaganda and DJ Pone 3's reports for several months allowed them to get a fairly good idea of what Wastelands was like. I can only imagine what it must be like for a stable dweller to come out here without knowing anything about it. Eventually we got access to the outside radio, but there's still some references we don't get at all, like the cap stuff. DJ doesn't talk much about money matters anyway. I heard him talk about Red Eye putting a bounty on someone's head a few times, so he always takes sides of the 3 people in the Wasteland. He never mentioned how much such bounties were, or which currency was used for them. She looked at her ghoul companion. Even if I had gotten the caps reference, I'd never have believed it to be anything but Wasteland slang for money. I mean, really. Bottle caps? Our stable probably has components to make those. You're more informed than I realized, Lemon Frisk said. Still, you vastly underestimate the danger of this place. Misty nodded. We knew the politics, but not the wildlife. The council and the WRD were probably more aware of it, though. They had a lot of official planning going on. But Big Apple, Spray Paint, and I, we didn't wait. Stupid, of course. She lowered her head and sighed. Big Apple and I, we, well, couldn't be together. Because of the program. It could cause risk in future generations. We thought it was a load of manure. The next generations were going to be out in the big world anyway. So we snuck out. Spray Paint caught on and insisted he wanted to come along, so we let him. She stared in front of her and slowly shook her head. We didn't even bring a gun. Lemon Frisk frowned. You lost your lover out there? Ah, crap. There I am, 2 nights ago, gushing to you about stuff that happened 200 years ago. While you're dealing with that? I'm so sorry. She shook her head resolutely. Don't be. Talking about things like this helps us get over them and puts them in perspective. She glanced at Spray Paint and lowered her head. Believe me, I should know. As they walked on, the sun once again peeked out under the cloud cover. Capsworth trotted over to Lemon Frisk to ask him about their situation. Do you think it's safe to camp here? The unicorn asked. Well, when Misty and I came for this place, nothing tried to eat us. Capsworth smiled. No offense, but if I were a cannibalistic raider, I probably wouldn't try to eat a ghoul. I don't think that would stop a radigator, though, Lemon Frisk mused, having seemingly no problem overthinking the subject of getting consumed. But rad roaches tend to stay away from me. Probably the necromantic aura. Heck, it even affects most ponies. He threw a look at the mare standing beside him. Not all of them, unfortunately. Misty just grinned in response. Capsworth nodded. Looks like we'll cap around the field then. I hope there aren't any critters around. I'll let the guys guard the other perimeter. I suppose you have no problem helping them a hoof? Not at all, Lemon Frisk replied. I don't sleep anyway. Misty turned towards him. You don't? But you checked into the inn with us. I don't like leaving my friends unprotected in an unknown inn in a strange town either, though. Misty gave him a grateful look. Thanks. After setting up the tents, the group was chatting around their campfire. The fire kept the rad roaches away and would make it easier for the guards to see any bigger threats incoming. They just hoped it wouldn't attract raiders. Spray Paint sat down to Misty, facing the campfire. Hey, gang, he said. You've been talking with Capsworth a lot lately, Misty remarked. Spray Paint smiled. Yeah, he asked me to reconsider going with you guys after this trip. Misty's eyes widened. What? You're not really considering that, are you? And why not? He asked. He really does need the help. I know. I worked in his shop for a day. He looked at Misty. Besides, I'd be nothing more than a lovesick fool if I kept following you at this point. Surely you must realize that. A sad frown appeared on Misty's face. But you're the only friend. Realizing what she was saying, she looked at Lemon Frisk and sighed. You're right, Spray Paint. I'm sorry. I really wish I could be more than a friend to you, but life just doesn't work that way. Don't worry, Rusty. I'll manage, Spray Paint said with a grin. Don't call me that, Paint Fumes, she explained in mock complaint. Isn't that right, Couch Potato? Spray Paint shot back. Lemon Frisk could see these sparring matches between them were probably a common occurrence in the stable. Ooh, that was a cheap shot, Misty replied, before bursting into giggles. It didn't take long before the turquoise pony was laughing too, especially after she stopped poking him. No fair, Spray Paint said, gasping. You used that hoof to poke the ghoul. Good. Maybe you'll get squishier then. I don't wanna. By this time, he was tickling her back, and the sparring match devolved into 2 ponies rolling on the ground laughing. After that, they were just laying there, on their backs. Thanks, Misty said. I needed that. Spray Paint had a bittersweet expression on his face. I know, Misty. I know. He rolled back onto his belly and stared at the campfire. And that's why I have to go my own way. Misty nodded. I understand. I should never have let you come with us. True, Spray Paint said. But if it means you would have gotten killed by that Ratigator said, I still think it was worth it. Misty rolled onto her belly and rested her head on her forehooves. Thanks. Lemon Frisk looked at the two ponies, finally understanding the dynamics between them. To be young and, alive. What was it like living in Stable 1? Spray Paint asked him. I'd imagine it got really boring after 200 years. It does get boring. There are always ways to fight boredom, though. I've heard one of them is pretty much the same in all stables, even across the wastelands. And that is? Misty asked, knowing the old ghoul wouldn't go on before any pony asked him anyway. Music, he said. I don't think any pre-war singer's portfolio can compete with the amount of songs written by Buoyant Waves. I don't think DJ Ponsbury ever played that, Spray Paint said. Lemon Frisk smiled. Not surprising. He never recorded any of it. He just stays alive to sing it. I'm not sure if the good DJ would consider it anyway. It's usually pretty depressing stuff. We got a lot of wartime horrors to work through. And that's just the way he does it. Do you know any of them? Misty asked. That depends. Do you want me to sing it? Lemon Frisk said. Yes. I'm afraid I'll have to Lemon Frisk stopped mid-sentence when he saw her face. She wasn't teasing or annoying him. She really wanted to hear the ghoul's song. He sighed. Very well, he said. I hardly have a good singing voice, but I'll try. The colts and fillies all forgot the games we used to play. All the brave stallions and the mares died in the olden day. And as we look upon the land that we once knew to thrive, Equestria, we ask the ground, oh, are you still alive? When we first felt the scorching winds, saw the fires green, and the pink clouds consumed us all and everything we'd seen. We looked again, and in the end, result of all the strife, we could not help but ask ourselves, oh, are we still alive? And as we roam the wasted lands, now covered in dust, we try to find all the values there of harmony and trust. But as we walk into the towns that we once did survive, we see the blood spilled on the ground. Oh, are they still alive? Footnote. Level up. New perk. Laying them to rest. Your karma increases when you properly bury dead bodies, no matter if they are recently deceased, ghouls, or original war victims. Audiobooker's notes. I hope you guys didn't mind my singing. I'm not too confident in it, and especially not when I'm singing as a ghoul. But otherwise, I had fun with this chapter. It was nice. I also had fun with warming up with the Rainbow Factory Orb and the Morale Officer Orb. You can find those on the Media Fire, which, if you're just looking at my YouTube, I'll probably put a link to. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. See you next time. Bye.